So how does grading work in here? And I've talked about standards-based grading and given you kind of an overview. I've talked about all the process standards, and we talked about the units that we'll be covering. Those are the contents that we'll be dealing with. So how in the end do you get a grade in here? Because this is kind of different maybe from what you've done before. So you'll notice in your Genesis gradebook that there aren't assignments. Actually, starting from September 1st, you're going to have columns for all of the standards. So you'll see, I mean, this is my drawing obviously, but you'll see columns for process standard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then you'll see process standards for kinematics and energy and forces in whatever order that we do them in the class. So they'll be all filled up. So but there's not that many. There's maybe 17. Maybe you might have some test taking standards in there. There may be some odds and ends kind of columns with some progress, you know, if I want to demonstrate that you're growing or that you're missing assignments. I may have columns for that. But these are the things that you're being graded on. So what happens is that at the end of every unit, I'm going to go into Canvas and I'm going to transfer your current score in all of these, right, process standards to Genesis so you can see it. But you can see how you're doing in any single one of, you know, any day by going into Canvas, clicking the Grades tab, and then clicking the Learning Mastery tab, because when you do Lab 1, you're going to get a score in a couple of these process standards. When you do Lab 2, you're going to get another grade in those same columns. So what does that mean? Well, all that means is that the latest value that you get, the latest score, is the one that wins. Right? So you're going to have a whole bunch of scores and they're going to keep getting replaced and replaced and replaced over the course of the year. I'm not doing this every day. I'll do it at the end of each unit. So every 6 weeks, every 4 weeks, every 3 weeks, depending when the units end. So I'll update it. So they don't get averaged, they get replaced. So once you have a whole bunch of scores, those will get averaged, and you'll be able to get an average score. And I'll associate this average score with a letter grade, all right, a number grade actually. So you'll get a grade, but I'm only going to do that maybe twice a year, midterm and then towards finals, so that you have an idea how you're doing. But you can judge, right? Once you kind of see how you're doing, you'll have a good sense of what that means. We score on a 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. You don't get anything in between. You'll see there's some fractions here that probably won't happen. You'll probably end up with a 4, 3, 2, 1 like that. So you'll end up with a 95, an 85, a 75, like something like that. And we'll talk more about where those divisions kind of line up at a later point. For the units, at the end of each unit, this will be updated and that'll be locked in, right? But there will be some opportunities, depending what class you're in, for a new final assessment, a final attempt to be had. So if whether it's on the final exam or whether you do a retake, we'll talk about those opportunities as they come up. If you have a question, it'll take a little getting used to, I know, but if you have questions, you should check the announcements. There'll be a page devoted to grading there. There are several videos that I've made to explain this, and you can always contact me and I'll be happy to sit down and talk to you about it.